am glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. You contribute nothing but costs to this family. Brittany's words sliced through the Christmas morning air like a knife through my heart. My son Jason laughed, actually laughed, at his wife's cruelty. The room fell silent as my grandchildren froze, colorful wrapping paper still clutched in their small hands. I smiled sweetly and said 7 words that would change everything. Then the $7,000 monthly mortgage payment ends now. Let me back up and tell you how I ended up in this situation. My name is Donna Miller, but everyone calls me Donna. I'm 67, widowed for 3 years now, and apparently, according to my daughter-in-law, a financial burden on my own family. Isn't that rich? It started innocently enough. I'd been feeling under the weather for weeks. Joint pain, fatigue, the usual suspects when you're my age. My doctor prescribed a new medication that would help, but it wasn't covered by Medicare. The cost? A modest $100 monthly. Not exactly breaking the bank, but on a fixed income, every dollar counts. So there I was, Christmas morning at Jason and Brittany's beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in suburban Connecticut. The tree was magnificent, standing tall in their vaulted-ceiling living room. Presents were piled high beneath it, and the smell of Brittany's famous cinnamon rolls filled the air. Lily and Noah were tearing through wrapping paper with the enthusiasm only 12- and 10-year-olds can muster. I waited until the chaos died down before approaching Jason, my only son, the boy I'd raised alone after his father died when he was just 14. "Honey," I said quietly, my hands nervously twisting the tissue paper from a gift box. "I hate to bring this up on Christmas, but I could really use some help with my new prescription costs. It's just $100 a month." The room went silent. Brittany looked up from her phone, her perfectly manicured eyebrow arched in what I'd learned to recognize as annoyance. Her blonde hair was pulled back in an immaculate ponytail, not a strand out of place despite the early hour. "Are you serious right now, Donna?" she asked, her voice carrying across the room. "It's for my arthritis medication," I explained, feeling heat creep up my neck. "The insurance doesn't—" "You contribute nothing but costs to this family," Brittany interrupted, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "First the emergency room visit last month, then the car repair you needed help with. And now this? When does it end?" I stood there stunned. In 3 years of living alone, I'd asked for help exactly 3 times. But apparently that was 3 times too many for my son's wife. Jason, my Jason, who I'd raised alone after his father died, who I'd worked double shifts to put through college, looked at his wife and laughed. Not a nervous laugh or an uncomfortable chuckle. A genuine, agreeable laugh. Something inside me snapped. "You're absolutely right, Brittany," I said, my voice calm as a lake before a storm. "I do contribute nothing but costs, so let's fix that right now. The $7,000 monthly mortgage payment I've been making on this house ends today." Jason nearly choked on his coffee. Brittany's face went from smug to confused to pale in about 3 seconds flat. "Mortgage?" Brittany turned to Jason, her voice barely a whisper. "You told me the house was paid off. Remember? You said your mother left you money when she died." Jason's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. That's when things got really interesting. You should have seen Brittany's face when she realized her perfect little life was built on lies. Jason looked like he was about to have a stroke, and honestly, I was starting to enjoy myself. "Jason?" Brittany's voice was dangerously quiet. "What mortgage?" "I can explain," Jason stammered, setting down his coffee cup with shaking hands. "Mom, please don't—" "Don't what?" I interrupted. "Don't tell your wife the truth, that you've been lying to her for 2 years about how you could afford this house." Brittany slowly stood up, her Christmas morning composure cracking like thin ice. 2 years? Jason, we bought this house 2 years ago. You said you had $80,000 for the down payment from your mother's inheritance. He did have $80,000, I said helpfully. From my late husband's life insurance policy. The money I gave him as a gift when you decided to upgrade from your apartment. Jason shot me a warning look. Oh, now he was worried about what I might say. But Jason, Brittany continued, her voice rising, you told me your mother died when you were young. You said that's why Donna wasn't your real mother, just your stepmother. The room fell silent, except for the soft hum of Christmas music playing from Brittany's expensive wireless speaker. Even the kids had stopped playing with their new toys, sensing the tension. I couldn't help myself. I laughed, actually laughed out loud. Stepmother? I looked at Jason with genuine amusement. Is that what you told her? That I'm your stepmother? Jason's face was now a fascinating shade of red. Mom, please. Oh, this is precious, I continued. Brittany, honey, I gave birth to this lying son of mine 38 years ago after 18 hours of labor. I have the stretch marks to prove it. Brittany sank back into her chair like someone had cut her strings. You lied about your mother being dead? I didn't lie exactly, Jason said weakly. I just simplified things. Simplified? Brittany's voice was climbing octaves. You let me believe your mother was dead for 8 years of marriage? Not dead, Jason said desperately. Just not around much. This was getting better by the minute. I decided to help things along. Brittany, dear, did Jason also simplify the part about my paying for Lily's piano lessons? Or Noah's baseball equipment? I turned to face her directly. Oh, and those lovely family vacations to Florida every summer. Brittany's mouth fell open. The Disney trips? You said your company paid for those as bonuses. My company? Jason looked genuinely confused now. I work in accounting for a mid-sized firm. When have they ever given bonuses like that? I watched Brittany's world crumble in real time. And if I'm being honest, it was quite satisfying after years of being treated like an inconvenience. Jason Miller, Brittany said, and I had to give her credit for the full name treatment. How much money has your mother been giving us? Jason looked at me pleadingly. I smiled back sweetly. Go ahead, son. Tell your wife exactly how much your dear old mother has contributed to your perfect little life. The silence stretched on like a funeral procession. Jason was sweating through his Christmas sweater. Brittany looked like she'd seen a ghost, and I was having the most entertaining Christmas morning I'd had in years. Well, Brittany prompted, her voice icy enough to freeze hell over. Jason cleared his throat. It's not as bad as it sounds. How much, Jason? I decided to help move things along. After all, we were burning daylight, and I had plans to visit my friend Eleanor later. Should I tell her, or would you prefer to maintain the dignity of confessing yourself? I asked pleasantly. Jason shot me a look that could have killed lesser women. Mom, this isn't helping. Oh, but I think it is helping, I replied. I think it's helping tremendously. Brittany deserves to know exactly what she's been living with. Brittany stood up and walked to the window, staring out at their perfectly manicured lawn, the lawn that I'd also been paying for through a monthly landscaping service. But I decided to save that revelation for later. The mortgage is $7,000 a month, Jason finally said. Mom's been covering it since we bought the house. And, I prompted, and the utilities and the landscaping. And, Jason's shoulders slumped. The car payments on the BMW. Brittany whirled around. My car? You said you got a raise. I did get a raise, just not that big of a raise. I was impressed. Jason had managed to lie about virtually every aspect of their financial life. I'd raised him better than this, but apparently somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten the values I'd tried to instill. How much? Brittany whispered. Total. How much has she been paying? Jason looked at me again. I examined my fingernails, freshly manicured at my own expense, of course. "About $12,000 a month," he mumbled. "$12,000? Brittany's voice cracked. "Jason, that's $144,000 a year. That's more than both our salaries combined." "I was going to tell you when— When were you going to tell me? When your mother died and the money stopped coming." The kids had quietly disappeared upstairs, probably sensing that Christmas morning had taken a decidedly adult turn. "Brittany," Jason tried again, "you have to understand. When we got married, you had expectations. The house, the cars, the lifestyle. I just wanted to give you what you wanted." "With your mother's money." "With family money," Jason corrected weakly. Brittany laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Family money that you convinced me didn't exist. Family money from a mother you let me believe was your stepmother at best and dead at worst." I stood up, smoothing my holiday dress. "Well, this has been enlightening, but I should probably head home." "Wait," Brittany said, turning to me. "Why now? Why are you telling me this now?" I picked up my purse and car keys. "Because, dear Brittany, you just told me I contribute nothing but costs to this family, so I thought I'd show you exactly what those costs look like when they disappear." "You can't just stop paying," Jason said desperately. "The house payment is due in a week. If we default, then I suggest you figure out how to make $7,000 in the next week," I replied cheerfully. "Maybe Brittany can pick up some extra shifts. Or you could ask your company for one of those bonuses you've been telling her about." I headed for the door, then paused and turned back. "Oh, and Jason, next time you want to lie about your family, you might want to remember who raised you to be better than this." The drive home was peaceful. I even stopped for coffee and a Christmas cookie at my favorite bakery. But when I got home, I found something that changed everything. Sitting on my front porch was a thick manila envelope with my name written in Brittany's careful handwriting. Inside the envelope were copies of financial documents that made my blood run cold. Now I thought I knew everything about Jason and Brittany's finances. After all, I'd been funding their lifestyle for 2 years. But these documents revealed a level of deception that even I hadn't imagined. Credit card statements showing $67,000 in debt. A second mortgage on the house I'd been paying for, one that Jason had taken out 6 months ago without telling me. Bank statements showing a checking account with $847 in it, despite the fact that they both had decent jobs. And here was the kicker: a life insurance policy on me. A $500,000 policy that Jason had taken out 18 months ago, listing himself as the sole beneficiary. I sat in my living room surrounded by evidence of my son's betrayal and felt something I hadn't experienced in my 67 years. Genuine fear of my own child. My phone rang. "Did you get the envelope?" Brittany asked without preamble. "I did. Where did you find all this?" "Jason's been hiding documents in his office at work. I drove over there and demanded his supervisor let me into his desk." Her voice was tight with controlled fury. "Turns out Jason's been forging my signature on loan applications." I flipped through the papers again. "Brittany, some of these documents, they show you as co-signing for things. If you didn't sign them, I didn't sign any of them. Not the second mortgage, not the credit cards, not the life insurance policy on you." Brittany's voice was shaking. "Donna, I think Jason's been planning something." A chill ran down my spine. "What kind of something?" "The life insurance policy was purchased right after you started getting those dizzy spells last year. Remember when you ended up in the emergency room?" I remembered. I'd been having episodes of vertigo, and Jason had been so attentive, insisting on driving me to all my doctor's appointments, staying with me during tests. "Brittany, are you suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you to be careful. Very careful." After hanging up, I sat in my recliner staring at the Christmas tree I had decorated alone. as I had for the past 3 years. The tree Jason and Brittany had been too busy to help with, despite all the money I'd been giving them. My phone buzzed with a text message from Jason. "Mom, we need to talk, coming over now." I looked at the life insurance policy again. $500,000, more than enough to pay off their debts and keep their lifestyle going for years. Jason had been my sweet boy once. The child who brought me dandelions and called them flowers. The teenager who worked part-time to help with household expenses when money was tight. When had he become this stranger who could forge documents and lie so effortlessly? 20 minutes later, I heard Jason's key in my lock. The key I'd given him for emergencies, which he apparently now considered my refusal to bankroll his lies an emergency. "Mom?" he called out. "In the living room," I replied, tucking the documents behind my chair cushion. Jason walked in looking haggard. His Christmas sweater was wrinkled, his hair disheveled. He looked like a man whose world was falling apart. "Good," he said without preamble. "We need to fix this. Brittany's talking about lawyers, about divorce, about pressing charges for the forged signatures." "Maybe she should." Jason's face paled. "Mom, you don't understand. If this goes public, I'll lose my job, my license, everything." "You should have thought of that before you started committing fraud." "It's not fraud. It's family. You're my mother. Family helps family." I stood up, all 5'4" of me, and looked my son in the eye. "Family doesn't take out life insurance policies on each other, Jason." His face went completely white. "You know about that?" "I know about all of it now. The second mortgage, the credit cards, the forged signatures. All of it." Jason sank into the couch like a deflated balloon. "I can explain." "No, Jason, you can't explain this away. Not this time." That's when I told him what I decided to do next, and his reaction was not what I expected. Instead of panic or shame, his face hardened into something I didn't recognize. "You can't," he said flatly. "I won't let you." "Let me?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Kevin, you seem to have forgotten something important." "What's that?" he challenged. "I'm your mother, not your employee. And I'm your only family," he shot back. "When you're old and sick and need someone to take care of you, Brittany and I are all you have." The threat was clear, and it hit exactly where he intended. But Jason had underestimated his mother. "Actually," I said, settling back into my chair, "that's where you're wrong." I pulled out my phone and showed him a contact I'd been meaning to call for weeks. Elder care attorney, recommended by Eleanor. "I've been doing some research, Jason, about elder abuse, about financial exploitation, about what happens to sons who forge their mother's signatures on legal documents." Jason's confident expression faltered. "You wouldn't." "I also called my bank this morning," I continued. "Amazing what you learn when you ask the right questions, like how someone's been using my debit card information to make online purchases I didn't authorize. That was just for household stuff, things for the kids. Identity theft, Jason, that's what it's called when you use someone else's financial information without permission." Jason stood up abruptly, his hands clenched into fists. "You're making a mistake, Mom. A big mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting you. Brittany put you up to this, didn't she? She's always been jealous of our relationship. She can't stand that you love me more than her." I stared at my son, this stranger wearing Jason's face, and felt something break inside me that could never be repaired. "Jason, I need you to leave now. This is my inheritance you're playing with," he said, his voice rising. "Dad's life insurance money, the house equity. It's all supposed to come to me anyway." "Your inheritance?" I stood up slowly. "Jason, let me tell you about your inheritance." I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder I'd hoped never to use. Inside were documents Jason had never seen, papers from lawyers he didn't know I'd consulted. Your father left me everything, Jason. The house, the investments, the life insurance. Everything. I never legally had to share any of it with you. Jason's face went ashen. That's not... Dad would never... Your father watched you from the time you were 16 years old. He saw how you treated money, how you expected everything to be handed to you. He was worried about what would happen if you inherited everything at once. I opened the folder and showed Jason the will he'd never been allowed to see. He left it all to me, with instructions to provide for you gradually if I deemed you responsible enough to handle it. Jason grabbed for the papers, but I pulled them back. These are copies. The originals are in a safe deposit box you don't have access to. You've been lying to me my whole life, he spat. I've been protecting you your whole life, I corrected. But apparently I should have protected myself instead. Jason's phone buzzed with a text. He looked at it, and his face went even paler. Brittany? I asked. He nodded wordlessly. What did she say? Jason showed me the phone. The message was short and devastating. Locks changed. Don't come home. Divorce papers filed and... For a moment, just a moment, Jason looked like the lost little boy he'd been when his father died. But then his face hardened again. This is all your fault, he said. If I hadn't opened my mouth, you'd still be lying to your wife and stealing from your mother. Jason headed for the door, then turned back with a look that chilled me to the bone. You think you've won something here, Mom? When you're dying alone in some nursing home, remember this conversation. After he left, I sat in my living room for a long time, looking at the Christmas presents under my tree. Presents for grandchildren I might never see again. Gifts for a son who'd become a stranger. But then my phone rang, and everything changed again. Mrs. Miller, this is Detective Thomas Morrison with the Connecticut State Police Financial Crimes Unit. We need to talk. My hand tightened on the phone. She discovered he'd been forging her signature on investment documents, transferring money from her retirement accounts to accounts he controlled. My blood ran cold. Eleanor, my friend Eleanor, the widow who lived 3 streets over, the one who'd recommended the elder care attorney. How much? Over $200,000. She's 81 years old, lives alone, and trusted Jason to help manage her finances after her husband died. I felt sick. Are there others? 3 more that we know of. All elderly widows, all alone, all trusting Jason to help them with financial matters. Detective Morrison leaned forward. Mrs. Miller, what your son did to you wasn't just family dysfunction. It was part of a pattern of elder financial abuse. He's been targeting vulnerable seniors for years. I thought about all the times Jason had offered to help with my banking, my investments, my bill paying, how he'd gradually taken over more and more of my financial life under the guise of being helpful. The life insurance policy, Detective Walsh said. That's what made us take a closer look at your situation. Taking out large life insurance policies on elderly family members without their knowledge is often a precursor to more serious crimes. More serious crimes? I echoed. Mrs. Miller, we've seen cases where financial abuse escalates to physical harm when the perpetrator feels trapped or desperate. I remembered Jason's face when he'd left, the cold calculation in his eyes. Had I been in danger all this time without knowing it? What happens now? I asked. We need your full cooperation. We need you to document every financial transaction, every forged signature, every unauthorized access to your accounts. This case is bigger than just you and Jason. Detective Morrison handed me a business card. Mrs. Miller, I want you to consider something. Your son has been stealing from elderly people for years. By coming forward, you're not just protecting yourself. You're protecting other families from going through what you've experienced. After the detectives left, I sat alone with my thoughts. Jason wasn't just a son who'd lost his way. He was a predator who'd been systematically stealing from vulnerable people. My phone buzzed with a text from Brittany. "Donna, I'm so sorry for everything. We need to talk." But before I could respond, there was a knock at my door. Through the peephole, I could see Jason standing on my porch, his face twisted with rage. He knew about the police visit, and he wasn't happy. That's when I realized my Christmas morning confrontation had been just the beginning. I opened the door with the chain still attached. Jason's eyes were wild, desperate, and for the first time in my life, I was genuinely afraid of my own son. "Let me in, Mom. We need to talk." "I think we've talked enough for one day." "The cops were here, weren't they?" His voice was eerily calm. "I saw their car leaving." I didn't answer, but my silence was confirmation enough. "Mom, you have no idea what you've done. No idea what you've started." "I started nothing, Jason. You did this all by yourself." He pressed his face closer to the crack in the door. "Those detectives, they don't know the whole story. They don't know about the gambling debts." My blood turned to ice. "What gambling debts?" "The people I owe money to, Mom. They're not the patient type. If I can't pay them back." He let the threat hang in the air. "How much, Jason?" $80,000, due next week." I closed my eyes. Even after everything, some part of me wanted to help him, but that part was getting smaller by the minute. "That's not my problem anymore." Jason's mask slipped completely. "It will be your problem when they come looking for their money. These aren't bill collectors, Mom. These are dangerous people." "Then you'd better figure out how to handle dangerous people, because you're not getting another penny from me." "Fine." Jason stepped back from the door. "But remember, you chose this. Whatever happens next, you chose it." After he left, I called Detective Morrison immediately. "Mrs. Miller, what's wrong?" "Jason was just here. He mentioned gambling debts. $80,000. There was a pause. "That explains a lot. Mrs. Miller, I need you to pack a bag tonight. We're going to put you somewhere safe until we can arrest your son." "You really think he'd hurt me?" "Mrs. Miller, desperate people do desperate things, and your son just became very desperate." 2 hours later, I was sitting in a modest hotel room across town, watching the local news with Detective Walsh. The story was breaking. "Local man arrested in elder fraud scheme," the headline read, as Jason's mugshot filled the screen. The reporter was describing how police had arrested him at an underground poker game, trying to bet money he didn't have. "He didn't even make it 12 hours, Detective Walsh said with grim satisfaction. Desperation makes people stupid. But the story wasn't over. The reporter continued. "Police say this is just the beginning of a larger investigation into organized elder fraud in the tri-state area." Detective Walsh looked at me. "Mrs. Miller, there's something else you need to know." "What is it?" Jason wasn't working alone. The next morning brought news that would change everything I thought I knew about my son's crimes. "Brittany?" I stared at Detective Morrison in disbelief. "You're saying Brittany was involved?" "Not initially," he clarified. "But we found evidence that she discovered Kevin's activities months ago, and instead of reporting them, she helped him expand the operation." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "But she's the one who brought me the documents. She's the one who exposed him. Think about it, Mrs. Miller. How did she know exactly where to find all those papers? How did she know which documents to look for?" The pieces started falling into place. Brittany's sudden interest in my finances over the past year, her questions about my other assets, her insistence that I should simplify my banking by letting Jason handle everything. She was planning to turn on him all along? We think so. Our investigation shows Brittany was positioning herself to be the victim when Jason inevitably got caught. She'd keep the house, claim she was deceived, and walk away clean. Detective Morrison pulled out a tablet and showed me screenshots of text messages between Jason and Brittany. "These are from 3 months ago," he said. I read the first message. Brittany texting Jason, "We need an exit strategy. Your mother's getting suspicious." And Jason's response, "Don't worry, I can handle my mother." I read through more messages, each one more damning than the last. Brittany suggesting which elderly clients would be easiest targets. Jason reporting back on how much money he'd managed to steal from each victim. "Mrs. Miller," Detective Walsh said gently, "Brittany filed for divorce yesterday, but not because she was outraged by Jason's crimes. She filed because she knew we were closing in, and she wanted to protect her assets." "How long have you been watching them?" 6 months. Mrs. Eleanor Taylor wasn't the first victim to come forward. She was just the first one brave enough to file charges. Detective Morrison leaned forward. "Mrs. Miller, we need you to help us with something." "What's that?" "Brittany doesn't know we're on to her yet. She thinks she successfully played the role of the innocent wife. We need you to meet with her. Wear a wire. Get her to confess to her role in the scheme." I thought about Brittany's perfect smile, her carefully manicured appearance, the way she'd made me feel like an unwanted burden in my own son's life, all while planning to rob me blind. "When do we start?" The meeting was set for the next afternoon at a coffee shop downtown. Brittany had texted me claiming she wanted to make things right and discuss how we could move forward as a family. As I walked into the coffee shop with a recording device taped to my chest, I wondered how I'd missed the signs that both my son and daughter-in-law were predators. Brittany was already there, looking perfectly put together despite supposedly having her world turned upside down. She hugged me like we were old friends instead of co-conspirators in her husband's downfall. "Donna, I'm so glad you agreed to meet with me," she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "Of course, dear. Family is family, right?" Brittany's smile faltered for just a moment. "Exactly. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about our situation." "Our situation?" "Well, with Jason in jail, I'm going to need your help more than ever. The mortgage, the bills, the children's expenses. I can't do this alone." I sipped my coffee, marveling at her audacity. "I see. And what exactly are you proposing?" "I think we should make our arrangement official, legal. You could sign over power of attorney to me, and I'll make sure all your finances are properly managed." There it was. Brittany wasn't done stealing from me. She was just getting started. "That's very thoughtful of you, Brittany," I said carefully. "But I have to ask, why now? Why are you suddenly so concerned about my finances?" Brittany's eyes hardened for just a moment before the sweet smile returned. "Because, Donna, Jason kept you in the dark about so many things. The real state of our finances, the debts, the obligations. You need someone you can trust to help you navigate all of this." "Someone I can trust," I repeated. "Like you?" "Exactly like me." That's when I told her something that made her face go completely white. "Brittany, I know about the offshore accounts." The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Her coffee cup rattled against the saucer as she set it down with shaking hands. "I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered. "The Cayman Islands account, the one with $247,000 in it. Money from Mrs. Taylor, Mrs. Peterson, and the others." I watched her carefully. "Did you really think the police wouldn't find it?" Brittany's perfectly composed mask cracked completely. "How did you know about that?" "Honey, when you're under federal investigation for financial crimes, they look at everything. Every account, every transaction, every lie you've told." She looked around the coffee shop frantically, as if searching for an escape route. "Donna, you don't understand. Jason forced me." "Forced you to help steal from elderly people? Forced you to open secret accounts? Forced you to lie to me for 2 years? You don't know what it was like living with him." Brittany's voice rose, causing other customers to glance our way. The pressure, the constant demands for money, for status. He said if I didn't help him, he'd leave me with nothing. So you decided to steal from his victims instead of leaving him? It wasn't supposed to go this far, Brittany said, tears starting to flow. It was just supposed to be temporary, just until Jason could get a better job, make more money legitimately. I leaned back in my chair, studying this woman who'd shared holiday dinners with me, who'd let me babysit her children, who'd called me Mom for 8 years. Brittany, what was the plan for me? She looked confused. What do you mean? The life insurance policy, the gradual takeover of my finances. What was the end game? Brittany went very still. There was no end game. Don't lie to me, not anymore. The police already know about the nursing home applications you filled out in my name. The ones where you claimed I was incompetent and needed full-time care. Brittany's face went ashen. That was Jason's idea. Was it Jason's idea to list yourself as my emergency contact? To research facilities that would give you financial control as my responsible party? The coffee shop suddenly felt very quiet despite the normal afternoon crowd. Brittany stared at me like I was a stranger. How long have you been working with the police? Since yesterday. They've been watching you and Jason for months. Every phone call, every text message, every financial transaction. They know everything. Brittany stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. This is entrapment. You can't use anything I said. I want a lawyer. You can have all the lawyers you want, dear, but it won't change what you've already done. Brittany grabbed her purse and started toward the door, then turned back with a look of pure hatred. You sanctimonious old witch. You think you're so innocent? You enabled all of this. Every time you wrote a check, every time you paid a bill, you made it possible. You're right, I said calmly. I did enable it by trusting my family, by believing that people I loved wouldn't steal from me. That was my mistake. Your mistake was thinking you mattered, Brittany snarled. You were never family. You were just a bank account with legs. She stormed out, leaving me alone with my cold coffee and the recording device that had captured every word. Detective Morrison appeared at my table within minutes. We got it all, Mrs. Miller. Every confession, every admission of guilt. What happens now? Now we arrest Brittany and close down this operation for good. But as we left the coffee shop, Detective Morrison's phone rang. His face went grim as he listened. Mrs. Miller, we have a problem. Jason just made bail. How is that possible? Someone posted his bond. Someone with very deep pockets and very bad intentions. That's when I learned the truth about who was really behind my son's crimes. The money came from Vincent Castellano, Detective Morrison said as we sat in his unmarked car. Ever heard of him? I shook my head, but something cold crawled up my spine. He runs the largest illegal gambling operation in the tri-state area, also loan sharking, money laundering, and apparently elder fraud. You're saying Jason was working for organized crime? We think Jason started small, just stealing from you and a few clients. But when he got in over his head with gambling debts, Castellano offered him a deal. Work off the debt by recruiting elderly victims for a larger operation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Jason Detective Morrison looked at the message. He's not supposed to contact you. That's a violation of his bail conditions. Another text. Parking garage behind your hotel. Come alone or Brittany dies. My blood turned to ice. They have Brittany. That's impossible. We arrested her an hour ago. A third text arrived, this one with a photo attached. Brittany bound and gagged in what looked like a warehouse somewhere. Detective Morrison was already on his radio. All units, we have a hostage situation. Suspect is Jason Miller, armed and dangerous. I have to go, I said, reaching for the car door. Mrs. Miller, you cannot go to that meeting. This is exactly what he wants. Brittany might be terrible, but she doesn't deserve to die because of Jason's mistakes. It's a trap. He's desperate, cornered, and willing to do anything to get out of this. My phone rang. Jason's number. Answer it, Detective Morrison said. But keep him talking. We're tracking the call. Jason? Mom, I'm sorry it came to this. I really am. But you've left me no choice. Let Brittany go. She has children. My children, Jason growled. My children who I'll never see again because you destroyed my life. I didn't destroy anything, Jason. You did this to yourself. Maybe, but you could have helped me fix it. Instead, you chose to side with strangers over your own son. In the background, I could hear Brittany crying, pleading for her life. What do you want, Jason? I want my life back. I want you to call Detective Morrison and tell him you made a mistake, that you lied about everything. I can't do that. Then Brittany dies, and it's on your conscience. The line went dead. Detective Morrison was coordinating with multiple units, barking orders into his radio. Mrs. Miller, we're going to get Brittany back safely, but I need you to stay here. No! I unbuckled my seatbelt. Jason will never trust that I'm alone if he sees police cars, but he might trust his mother. Mrs. Miller, Detective, I'm 67 years old. I've been manipulated, stolen from, and threatened by my own son. I've lost my family, my savings, and my sense of safety. But I'll be damned if I let him become a murderer. 20 minutes later, I walked into the parking garage alone, or at least appearing to be alone. Detective Morrison and his team were positioned around the building, but Jason would see only me. Jason emerged from behind a concrete pillar, looking haggard and desperate. He was holding a gun. Where's Brittany? I asked. Somewhere safe for now. Jason, put the gun down. You're scaring me. Good. Maybe you'll finally take me seriously. I stepped closer, my hands visible and empty. What do you want from me, son? I want you to fix this. Call the police and tell them you lied. Tell them I never stole anything, never forged any documents. I can't do that, Jason. Too many people know the truth. Then Brittany dies. No, she doesn't. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. Because Brittany was never kidnapped. That photo you sent? It was taken from a movie she was in during college theater. The police verified it an hour ago. Jason's face went blank with confusion. You're losing your mind, Jason. Desperation has made you sloppy. There is no warehouse. There is no kidnapping. There's just you, alone, with a gun, threatening your mother in a parking garage. That's when Jason realized he'd been played, and his reaction changed everything. Jason lowered the gun, his face cycling through confusion, rage, and finally broken defeat. It was never real, was it? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. The photo, the threats, I made it all up in my head. Jason, when did you last sleep? Really sleep? He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I can't remember. I stepped closer, my maternal instincts overriding my fear. Son, you need help. Real help. I ruined everything, didn't I? Jason dropped the gun, and it clattered harmlessly across the concrete. My marriage, my children, my relationship with you, everything. Detective Morrison and his team moved in quickly, securing the weapon and placing Jason in handcuffs. But Jason didn't resist. He looked like a man who'd finally reached the end of a very long, very destructive road. Mrs. Miller, Detective Morrison said, are you all right? I looked at my son, my broken criminal son, and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. I'm fine. We're all fine now. Back at the hotel, Detective Walsh brought me a cup of tea as I processed everything that had happened. You were very brave today, Mrs. Miller. Not brave, just tired of being afraid. She sat down across from me. We've been doing some digging into Castellano's operation. It seems Jason was just one of several recruiters targeting the elderly. How many victims are there? We've identified at least 12 so far, but there could be more. They specifically target widows and widowers who are financially stable but socially isolated. I thought about Eleanor and the other victims, people like me, who just wanted to believe their families cared about them. What happens to Jason now? He'll be evaluated by a psychiatrist, but that doesn't change the charges. Elder fraud, identity theft, forgery, attempted extortion. He's looking at significant prison time. And Brittany? She's cooperating, trying to get a reduced sentence by giving us information on Castellano, but she'll still do time. I nodded, feeling strangely empty. And the children? What happens to Lily and Noah? Detective Walsh's expression softened. Brittany's parents have temporary custody for now. They seem like good people who are horrified by what their daughter did. They are good people, I agreed. They always treated me with respect, even when Brittany didn't. Would you like to see your grandchildren? We could arrange a supervised visit. Tears welled up in my eyes before I could stop them. More than anything. The next day I was allowed to visit Brittany at the county jail. I wasn't sure why I wanted to see her. Maybe to understand, maybe to find closure. Maybe just to look her in the eye one last time. She sat across from me at a metal table, wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashed with her carefully maintained blonde hair. Without her usual makeup and designer clothes, she looked younger and somehow more vulnerable. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "I wanted to ask you something." "What?" "Why? Why did you do it? You had everything. A beautiful home, healthy children, a husband who would do anything for you. Why wasn't it enough?" Brittany looked down at her hands, her perfect manicure already starting to chip. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." She looked up, and for the first time I saw something genuine in her eyes. Pain. "I grew up with nothing, Donna. My parents worked hard, but we were always one paycheck away from disaster. I swore I'd never live like that. When I met Jason, he seemed like my way out. Successful, ambitious, from a good family. But that wasn't enough either." "No," she admitted. "The more we had, the more I wanted. The bigger house, the nicer car, the private schools for the kids. It was never enough because I was always terrified of ending up back where I started." "So you decided to steal from the elderly? From people like me and Eleanor?" "I didn't start it," she said defensively. "Jason was already doing it when I found out. I just didn't stop it." "And then you joined in." She didn't deny it. "At first, I told myself it was just temporary, just until we got ahead. Then I started telling myself that you all had enough money anyway, that you wouldn't miss it. Eleanor is living on a fixed income. She had to sell her car to make ends meet after what Jason did to her." Brittany flinched. "I didn't know that." "You didn't want to know. It was easier to see us as walking bank accounts than as real people with real needs." Brittany's eyes filled with tears. "What's going to happen to my children?" "They'll be with your parents for now. They're good people. They'll take care of Lily and Noah." "Will you—" She hesitated. "Will you tell them I'm sorry?" "Your parents?" "My children. Will you tell them their mother is sorry?" I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation, but all I saw was a broken woman facing the consequences of her actions for the first time in her life. "I'll tell them you love them," I said finally. "The rest will have to wait until you can tell them yourself." As I stood to leave, Brittany called after me. "Donna?" I turned. For what it's worth, I am sorry, not just for getting caught, for all of it. I nodded, not quite ready to forgive, but perhaps ready to begin understanding. Outside the jail, I found Detective Morrison waiting for me. "How did it go?" "As well as could be expected." "Has Jason been evaluated yet?" "Yes. The psychiatrist diagnosed him with a gambling addiction and severe sleep deprivation, but he was fully aware of what he was doing with the fraud scheme. The mental health issues might get him some treatment, but they won't keep him out of prison." "Good," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "He needs to face consequences for what he did." "Mrs. Miller, there's something else you should know. We've frozen all of Jason and Brittany's accounts, including the offshore ones. With the court's permission, that money will be returned to the victims." "That's good news for Eleanor and the others." "Yes, but there's more. Castellano is still out there, and he's not happy about losing 2 of his recruiters. Until we apprehend him, you should consider staying somewhere safe." "I've been thinking about that," I said. "I have a sister in Arizona. I haven't seen her in years, but maybe it's time for a visit." "That sounds like a wise decision. We can arrange for transportation and security until you're safely out of state." As we walked to his car, I thought about everything that had happened in just a few short days. My life had been turned upside down, but somehow I felt stronger than I had in years. "Detective, there's one more thing I'd like to do before I leave." "What's that?" "I'd like to meet with the other victims, Eleanor and the rest. I think we could all use some support right now." Detective Morrison smiled. "I think that can be arranged." The next afternoon, in a private room at the local community center, I met the women whose lives had been upended by my son's crimes. Eleanor Taylor, 81, elegant even in her distress. She hugged me tightly when I arrived. "I'm so sorry, Donna. I had no idea Jason was targeting his own mother." Martha Peterson, 75, a retired teacher with a no-nonsense attitude. "I knew something was off about that boy from the moment he offered to simplify my finances." Ruth Johnson, 79, still sharp as a tack despite recent health issues. "My Harold always said to never trust anyone who offers to manage your money for free." I should have listened. And Barbara Wilson, 72, the newest victim, who'd only lost $5,000 before the scheme was uncovered. "I feel so foolish. I thought I was too smart to be taken advantage of." "We all did," I told her. "These people are professionals at gaining trust. That's how they succeed." As we shared our stories, I realized something important. None of us was alone anymore. We had each other, a new kind of family formed through shared trauma and resilience. "Ladies," I said as our meeting was winding down, "I have a proposition for you." "What kind of proposition?" Martha asked, eyeing me suspiciously. "When the courts release the stolen money, what if we used part of it to start a support group? A place where elderly victims of financial fraud could come for help and advice." "Like a neighborhood watch, but for old people's money," Ruth said with a wry smile. "Exactly. We could partner with the police, maybe bring in financial advisors we trust. We could even develop educational programs." Eleanor's eyes lit up. "We could call it the Silver Shields." "I like that," Martha nodded. "Gives it a dignified sound." "So we're agreed?" I looked around at these women, strangers a day ago, allies now. "We turn what happened to us into something positive?" Barbara, who had been quiet most of the meeting, spoke up. "My grandson is studying computer science at UConn. He could help us set up a website, maybe even an app for reporting suspicious activity." "Perfect," I smiled. "Let's make sure what happened to us doesn't happen to anyone else." As we exchanged phone numbers and made plans to meet again, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: purpose. Jason had taken my money, my trust, and my peace of mind, but he'd also given me something unexpected: a new mission in life. Later that evening, as I packed for my trip to Arizona, I received a call from Brittany's parents, Roger and Helen. "Donna?" Helen's voice was tentative. The children have been asking for you. I'd love to see them, but I'm leaving town for a while. We understand. It's probably safer that way. But before you go, would you come for dinner tonight? The kids would be so happy, and frankly, Roger and I could use a friendly face. I hesitated, thinking about all the preparations I still needed to make. But then I thought about Lily and Noah, innocent victims in all of this. I'll be there at 6. The modest ranch house where Roger and Helen lived was nothing like the showcase home Jason and Brittany had maintained. It was small but immaculate, with a well-tended garden and family photos lining the walls. Lily spotted me first as I walked up the driveway. "Grandma!" she cried, running out to meet me, Noah close behind. I knelt down and opened my arms, and they crashed into me with the unrestrained affection only children can offer. For a moment, everything else fell away. The fraud, the betrayal, the fear. There was just the warm weight of my grandchildren in my arms. "I missed you," Lily whispered in my ear. "I missed you too, sweetheart." "Are Mom and Dad coming home soon?" Noah asked, his small face serious. I looked up to see Roger and Helen standing in the doorway, their expressions a mixture of sorrow and resignation. We had agreed earlier by phone not to lie to the children, but to explain things in an age-appropriate way. "Let's go inside," I suggested gently. "We can talk over dinner." Over Helen's homemade lasagna, we carefully explained to Lily and Noah that their parents had made some bad choices and had to face the consequences. "Like when I took a cookie without asking and had to go to time out?" Noah asked. "Something like that," Roger said, but bigger. "How long will their time out be?" Lily wanted to know. I exchanged glances with Roger and Helen. "We don't know yet, sweetie. But what's important is that you're safe and loved. Your grandparents are going to take care of you, and I'll visit as often as I can." "Promise?" Noah's voice was small. "I promise." After dinner, as the children showed me the bedroom they were sharing, Lily pulled something from under her pillow. It was a small, somewhat ragged teddy bear. "This is Mr. Whiskers," she said solemnly. "Dad gave him to me when I was little." "He's very nice," I replied, not sure where this was going. "I want you to take him with you on your trip," she continued, "so you won't be lonely." My heart melted. "Oh, Lily, that's very kind, but Mr. Whiskers should stay with you." She shook her head firmly. "Grandma Helen says we have to take care of each other now. That's what family does." Out of the mouths of babes, I accepted the teddy bear with the gravity the gift deserved. "I'll take very good care of him and bring him back when I return." Later, as I was saying my goodbyes, Helen pulled me aside. "Donna, we want you to know that we don't blame you for any of this. What Jason and Brittany did was their choice." "I enabled them," I admitted. "I gave them money whenever they asked, never questioned their stories." "Because you loved them and trusted them," Roger said, joining us. "That's not a crime." "We'd like to stay in touch," Helen continued. "For the children's sake, of course, but also, well, we've always considered you family, even when Brittany made it difficult." I was touched by their kindness. "I'd like that very much." As I drove back to my house to collect my luggage before heading to the airport, I realized that while I'd lost my son and daughter-in-law to their own greed and deception, I'd gained something too. New friends, a new purpose, and a reminder that family isn't always defined by blood. My phone rang just as I pulled into my driveway. Detective Morrison. "Mrs. Miller, I wanted to let you know that we've made an arrest. Vincent Castellano is in custody." Relief washed over me. "That's wonderful news, Detective." "Yes, and there's more. Castellano is talking, trying to make a deal. He's given us names of other recruiters in the Elder fraud scheme. This could shut down the entire operation." "So it's really over?" "For you, yes. You can go to Arizona knowing you're safe. Castellano and his people won't be bothering you or any of the other victims again." I thanked him and ended the call, sitting for a moment in my car, letting the news sink in. It was over. The danger had passed. As I walked up to my front porch for the last time in what might be months, I saw a small package leaning against my door. It was wrapped in children's birthday paper with a card attached. Inside the card was a crayon drawing of 5 stick figures, 2 small, 2 medium-sized, and 1 with gray hair. Underneath, in Lily's careful printing, "Our family, love, Lily and Noah." The package contained a framed photograph of me with the children, taken last summer at the beach. We were all laughing, our faces alight with joy, unaware of the storm that was coming. I carefully packed both gifts in my carry-on bag, along with Mr. Whiskers, the teddy bear. Whatever the future held, I would face it knowing that I wasn't alone. I had a new kind of family now, one built on honesty, respect, and genuine care. As my plane took off the next morning, I looked down at the city below, growing smaller and smaller. Jason and Brittany had tried to take everything from me, but in the end they'd failed. I was stronger now, wiser, and surprisingly more hopeful than I'd been in years. Sometimes it takes losing what you thought was important to discover what truly matters. 6 months passed like a dream in the dry Arizona heat. My sister Caroline and I reconnected in ways I never thought possible after years of distance. Her small adobe house on the outskirts of Phoenix became my sanctuary as the legal proceedings against Jason and Brittany continued back in Connecticut. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Caroline asked as she helped me pack for my flight back east. At 72, she was 5 years my senior, her silver hair cropped short in a stylish pixie cut that suited her no-nonsense personality. "I need to see this through," I told her, carefully folding Mr. Whiskers, Lily's teddy bear, into my carry-on. "I owe it to Eleanor and the others." "You don't owe anyone anything, Donna. You've done more than enough." But we both knew I was going back, not just for the sentencing, but for the grandchildren who had written me faithfully every week for 6 months. The flight to Hartford was smooth, but my nerves were anything but as the familiar Connecticut landscape came into view below. Detective Morrison met me at the airport, his salt and pepper hair a little grayer than I remembered. "Welcome back, Mrs. Miller," he said, taking my suitcase. "How is Arizona?" "Healing," I replied. "How are things here?" "Busy. The Castellano case has opened up a whole network of elder fraud operations across 3 states. Your testimony helped make that possible." I had testified via video conference multiple times over the past months, recounting every detail of Jason and Brittany's scheme. It had been exhausting, but necessary. "And the Silver Shields?" I asked. Detective Morrison smiled. "Eleanor's got quite the operation going. They've already helped identify 2 other potential fraud cases and provided support to at least a dozen victims." Pride swelled in my chest. The support group we'd started had grown into something meaningful in my absence. "What about Jason and Brittany? Have they said anything?" "Jason's been cooperating, trying to get a reduced sentence. Brittany initially tried to play the innocent spouse card, but once we showed her the evidence, including your recorded conversation, she changed her tune." "And the children?" "Doing well from what I hear. Roger and Helen Davis are good people. The kids are in counseling, adjusting as best they can." I would be seeing Lily and Noah tomorrow before the sentencing. The thought both thrilled and terrified me. How much had they changed in 6 months? Would they still look at me with the same love, or had my extended absence created another kind of betrayal? The hotel Detective Morrison had arranged was comfortable but modest, nothing like the luxury Jason and Brittany had pursued so desperately. As I unpacked, my phone rang. "Donna?" Eleanor's voice was warm and welcoming. "Are you settled in?" "Just arrived. How are you, Eleanor?" Better now that you're back. We're having a Silver Shields meeting tomorrow morning before the sentencing. Will you come? I wouldn't miss it. The next morning, I walked into the community center conference room to find not just Eleanor, Martha, Ruth, and Barbara, but at least 15 other elderly men and women, all wearing silver lapel pins shaped like shields. Surprise! Eleanor hugged me tightly. We've grown a bit since you left. The meeting was inspiring. The group had developed educational materials, created a hotline for reporting suspicious financial activity, and even partnered with local banks to train tellers to recognize signs of elder financial exploitation. We've already prevented an estimated $300,000 in fraud, Martha reported proudly, and helped recover almost $75,000 for victims. This is amazing, Isati said, looking around at these remarkable people who had turned their victimhood into advocacy. I can't believe how much you've accomplished. We couldn't have done it without you, Eleanor said. Your case was the catalyst that brought us all together. After the meeting, I headed to Roger and Helen's house to see my grandchildren. My heart pounded as I walked up the familiar driveway. Would they remember me? Would they be angry that I'd left? The front door flew open before I could even ring the bell. Grandma! Lily's voice, higher and clearer than I remembered, called out as she raced toward me. At nearly 13 now, she was taller, more gangly, on the cusp of adolescence. Noah, now 11, followed close behind, his face split in a grin that showed his new braces. I knelt down, though not as low as before. They had grown so much, and opened my arms. They crashed into me with the same unrestrained affection they had shown 6 months ago. I brought someone who's been missing you, I said, pulling Mr. Whiskers from my bag. Lily took the teddy bear, hugging it close for a moment before surprising me by handing it back. He helped you, right? Maybe you should keep him a little longer. My eyes filled with tears at her generosity. How about we share him? He can stay with me during the trial, then come home to you. She nodded solemnly, her young face showing a maturity beyond her years. Inside, Roger and Helen welcomed me with coffee and homemade cookies while the children caught me up on their lives. Lily's participation in the school science fair, Noah's little league team making the playoffs. They've been through a lot, Helen said quietly as we watched the children play in the backyard. But children are resilient. The counselor says they're doing remarkably well, all things considered. Have they seen Jason or Brittany? Roger shook his head. Jason didn't want visits, said it would be too hard on everyone. Brittany sees them once a month, supervised. It's difficult, but the counselor says maintaining some connection is important, as long as the kids want it. And do they? Want it, I mean? Helen sighed. They love their parents, despite everything. That's the hardest part for them to reconcile, how the people they love could have done such terrible things. I understood that conflict all too well. What will you tell them about tomorrow? I asked. About the sentencing? The truth as simply as we can, Roger said firmly. They know their parents broke the law and have to face consequences. We've prepared them that those consequences might mean their parents won't be coming home for a long time. I nodded, respecting their approach. If there's anything I can do... You're already doing it, Helen said, squeezing my hand. Just being here, being a constant in their lives. That's what they need most right now. As I was leaving, Lily pulled me aside. Grandma, are you going to the court thing tomorrow? Yes, sweetie. Will you tell Mom and Dad we miss them, even though we're mad at what they did? My heart ached for this child forced to navigate such complex emotions. Of course I will. That night I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow I would face my son in court for the first time since the parking garage confrontation. What would I say to him? What could anyone say after such betrayal? The courthouse was an imposing stone structure in downtown Hartford. I arrived early, meeting Eleanor and the other core members of the Silver Shields in the lobby. We would face this together, as we had faced everything else. Detective Morrison found us huddled near the coffee stand, reviewing our prepared victim impact statements. "Mrs. Miller, there's something you should know before we go in," he said, drawing me aside. "Jason's asked to speak with you privately before the proceedings begin." My stomach clenched. "Why?" "He wouldn't say. It's entirely your choice. You have no obligation to see him." I thought about it for a long moment. Where would this meeting take place? A private conference room with guards present. He'd be restrained. The image of my son in handcuffs flashed through my mind. Despite everything, it still hurt. "I'll do it," I said finally. "I have things I need to say to him anyway." Detective Morrison led me down a sterile hallway to a small room with a table and 4 chairs. 2 uniformed officers stood by the door, their expressions professional but sympathetic. "We'll be right outside," Detective Morrison assured me. "If you want to leave at any point, just say the word." I nodded, straightening my spine as the door opened and Jason was led in. 6 months in jail had changed him. He'd lost weight, and his once perfect hair was cropped short in a prison cut. But the most striking change was in his eyes. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. The guard secured his handcuffs to a ring on the table, then stepped back to the wall, giving us the illusion of privacy. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "You look well, Mom," Jason finally said. "Arizona must have agreed with you." "It did," I replied, studying him. "What did you want to see me about, Jason?" He looked down at his restrained hands. "I wanted to apologize." "For which part?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "For stealing from me? For lying to me? For threatening me with a gun? Or for targeting other vulnerable elderly people like Eleanor Taylor?" "For all of it," he said quietly. "I know it doesn't change anything. I know I've destroyed your trust in our relationship, but I need you to hear it anyway. I'm sorry, Mom. Truly sorry. I waited for more. Excuses, justifications, pleas for forgiveness or leniency, but he offered none." "What happened to you, Jason?" I finally asked, the question that had haunted me for months. "I raised you better than this." He nodded, still not meeting my eyes. "You did. Dad did. I can't even explain it to myself sometimes. It started small, taking a little extra from client accounts, thinking I'd pay it back before anyone noticed. Then gambling to try to make enough to cover what I'd taken. Then more stealing to cover the gambling debts." "And what about me? Your own mother?" Now he did look up, his eyes filled with shame. "That was the worst part. I told myself it wasn't really stealing from you, that I was just accessing my inheritance early, that you'd want me to have a nice house, nice things for your grandchildren. I would have helped you if you'd asked honestly. I know that now, but I was too proud, too ashamed of my mistakes. And then Brittany. What about Brittany?" Jason sighed. "She had expectations, the lifestyle, the status. When we first got married, I wanted to impress her so badly. I cut corners, told little lies about my income, my prospects. Those lies just grew and grew until I couldn't find my way back to the truth. That's no excuse. No, it's not. It's just what happened. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Mom. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, and I take full responsibility for it." Coming from the son who had blamed me just 6 months ago for destroying his life, this acknowledgement was unexpected. "The children asked me to tell you they miss you," I said, watching his face, "even though they're angry about what you did." Pain flashed across his features. "Lily and Noah," he whispered. "God, I've messed up their lives so badly." "They're resilient. Roger and Helen are taking good care of them." "I know. They're good people." He hesitated. Will you keep in touch with them, with my children? They need family, especially now. Of course I will. They're my grandchildren, Jason. I love them. Thank you. He swallowed hard. There's one more thing. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but there's a letter for Lily and Noah. I wrote it to explain things, to tell them how sorry I am. Would you make sure they get it? Not now, maybe, but when they're ready? I studied my son's face, looking for manipulation, for the calculated charm he'd used so effectively in his schemes. But I saw only genuine remorse. I'll make sure they get it when the time is right. Thank you. He looked down at his hands again. I'm going away for a long time, Mom. The DA is recommending 7 to 10 years. With good behavior, maybe 5. I'll be almost 50 when I get out. What will you do then? Try to make amends somehow. I can never repay what I stole. Not just the money, but the trust, the security. But I have to try. The guard stepped forward. Time's up. I stood gathering my purse and the folder containing my victim impact statement. As I turned to leave, Jason called after me. Mom? I paused, looking back. For what it's worth, I really am proud of what you've done with the Silver Shields. Turning something terrible into something good. That's who you've always been. I didn't know what to say to that, so I simply nodded and walked out, my emotions too tangled to untangle. Detective Morrison was waiting in the hallway. Are you okay? I think so, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure. He seems different. People often find clarity when facing serious consequences, he observed. Whether it lasts beyond prison walls is another matter. The courtroom was filling up as we entered. The case had attracted significant media attention, partly because of the Silver Shield's advocacy work. Several reporters nodded to me as I took my seat in the front row, alongside Eleanor and the other victims. On the other side of the aisle sat Roger and Helen without the children. We had all agreed that the courtroom was no place for Lily and Noah, regardless of how much the proceedings would affect their future. The bailiff called the court to order, and Jason was led in, followed by his attorney. A few minutes later, Brittany entered with her legal team. Unlike Jason, she showed no outward signs of remorse. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled despite her incarceration, her posture rigid with defiance. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, reviewed the charges and the plea agreements that had been reached. Both Jason and Brittany had pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for their cooperation in the Castellano investigation. Before I pronounce sentence, the judge said, I'll hear from the victims. One by one, we approached the podium. Eleanor described how Jason had systematically drained her retirement accounts, forcing her to sell her car and cut back on medications. Martha detailed the shame and humiliation she felt at being duped. Ruth spoke of the lasting anxiety and distrust she now experienced with financial institutions. Then it was my turn. I walked to the podium, my prepared statement in hand. But as I looked out at the courtroom, at Jason's bowed head, at Brittany's defiant stare, at the reporters scribbling notes, I set the paper aside. Your Honor, I began, Jason Miller is my son. I raised him, loved him, and trusted him with my financial security. His crimes didn't just steal my money. They stole my sense of family, my sense of safety, and my ability to trust. I paused, looking directly at Jason. But I want the court to know that Jason's actions don't define all of us in this room. Mrs. Taylor has started a support group for elder fraud victims. Mrs. Peterson volunteers with senior legal aid services. We've turned our pain into purpose. Jason looked up then, meeting my eyes for the first time since our private conversation. Your Honor, justice isn't just about punishment. It's about protection. protecting other families from experiencing what we've been through. I support the sentence you're considering, not out of vengeance, but out of hope that Jason will get the help he needs and that other potential victims will be spared. I returned to my seat, my heart pounding. Eleanor squeezed my hand. The judge thanked us for our statements, then turned her attention to the defendants. Mr. Miller, Mrs. Miller, do either of you wish to address the court before sentencing? Jason stood. Yes, Your Honor. He turned to face the victims section. I want to apologize to everyone I hurt. My mother, Mrs. Taylor, Mrs. Peterson, Mrs. Johnson, Mrs. Wilson, and the others. What I did was inexcusable. I abused your trust in the worst possible way, and I'm deeply sorry. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. I also want to apologize to my children, even though they're not here today. I've failed them as a father, and that will be my greatest regret for the rest of my life. The judge nodded. Mrs. Miller? Brittany rose, her expression carefully composed. I want to apologize for my role in these crimes. I made terrible choices, and I take responsibility for them. Her words were correct, but her tone lacked the genuine remorse Jason had shown. It felt rehearsed, a performance for the court rather than a true apology. The judge seemed to sense this as well. Mr. Miller, in light of your cooperation with the investigation into Vincent Castellano's organization and your evident remorse, I sentence you to 7 years in federal prison for elder fraud, forgery, identity theft, and conspiracy. She turned to Brittany. Mrs. Miller, you have also cooperated with authorities. However, I am troubled by evidence suggesting you were aware of these crimes for months before they were discovered, and that you may have been planning to use this knowledge for your own financial gain. I sentence you to 5 years in federal prison. The judge addressed both defendants. In addition to your prison terms, you will jointly make restitution to all identified victims in the amount of $1.2 million. Upon release, you will serve 5 years of probation and will be prohibited from working in any financial capacity or having power of attorney for any individual outside your immediate family. With a rap of her gavel, it was over. Jason and Brittany were led away through separate doors, heading to the facilities where they would serve their sentences. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us, shouting questions about the silver shields and our reaction to the sentencing. Detective Morrison helped create a path through the crowd to his waiting car. How do you feel? Eleanor asked as we drove away. I don't know, I admitted. Relieved, I suppose, but also sad. This isn't how I imagined my son's life would turn out. It's not how any parent imagines things, she said gently. But you're not responsible for his choices, Donna. Remember that. I nodded, though the weight of everything that had happened still pressed heavily on my heart. After court, I went directly to Roger and Helen's house to see the children. They were waiting anxiously, Lily pacing the living room, Noah sitting cross-legged on the floor with a video game paused on the television. How long? Lily asked as soon as I walked in, her young face tight with tension. 7 years for your father, I said gently. 5 for your mother. Noah looked up, his eyes wide. That's forever. It seems that way now, I acknowledged, sitting down on the couch and patting the spaces beside me. Both children joined me. But it's not forever, and they'll still be your parents, even while they're away. Can we visit them? Lily asked. Yes, if you want to. Your grandparents can take you. I looked up at Roger and Helen, who nodded confirmation. Will you stay now? Noah asked, his small hand finding mine. Or do you have to go back to Arizona? It was the question I'd been wrestling with for weeks. Caroline had offered to sell me half of her house, making my Arizona stay permanent. The warm climate had been good for my arthritis, and I'd made new friends there. But being away from Lily and Noah for 6 months had been harder than I'd expected. I'm staying, I said, the decision crystallizing in that moment. I've already talked to a real estate agent about finding a small place nearby. The relief on their faces was worth any amount of desert sunshine. That evening, the Silver Shields hosted a small gathering at Eleanor's house, part celebration of the sentences handed down, part welcome home party for me. Martha brought her famous lemon squares, Ruth a bottle of sparkling cider for toasting. To justice, Eleanor said, raising her glass. To new beginnings, Martha added. To the Silver Shields, I concluded, and all the people will help. As the evening wound down, Detective Morrison pulled me aside. Mrs. Miller, I wanted to give you an update on the Castellano case. What's happening? He's going away for 20 years, minimum. His entire operation has been dismantled. The information Jason and Brittany provided was crucial to making that happen. I nodded, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. My son had done terrible things, but in the end he'd also helped bring down a much larger criminal enterprise. Thank you, Detective, for everything. No need for thanks, just doing my job, he smiled. Though I have to admit, this case has been particularly satisfying. Seeing you ladies turn your experience into something positive with the Silver Shields, that's not something we often get to witness in law enforcement. Will you keep in touch? The group could use ongoing advice from someone with your expertise. I'd be honored. 1 year later, I stood in the community center auditorium, looking out at a sea of faces, some familiar, many new. The Silver Shields had grown from our initial small group to a statewide organization with over 300 members. Welcome to our first annual Elder Fraud Prevention Conference, I said into the microphone. When we started this journey a year ago, we were just a handful of victims looking for support and understanding. Today, we're a movement. Eleanor joined me at the podium. At 82, she had more energy than many people half her age, serving as the organization's president while I handled outreach and education. Thanks to your efforts, she continued, we've helped identify and prevent over $1.5 million in potential fraud. We've assisted law enforcement in prosecuting 12 separate cases of elder financial abuse. And most importantly, we've created a community where older adults can learn, share, and support one another. The day was filled with workshops on recognizing scams, securing financial accounts, and understanding the legal resources available to elder fraud victims. Detective Morrison led a session on the latest fraud techniques being used by criminals, while I conducted a support group for family members of victims. My mother lost everything to a caregiver who convinced her to change her will, one woman shared tearfully. I don't care about the money, but seeing her so ashamed, so betrayed, it breaks my heart. The shame doesn't belong to your mother, I told her, remembering my own journey through that emotion. It belongs to the person who exploited her trust, and there is life after betrayal. We're living proof of that. At lunch, I sat with Lily and Noah, now 14 and 12. They had come with Roger and Helen to see me receive an award from the State Attorney General's office for the Silver Shields' work. Are you nervous about your speech, Grandma? Lily asked, snagging a French fry from my plate. A little, I admitted, but it's a good kind of nervous. Excited nervous. Dad would be proud of you, Noah said suddenly. He told us in his last letter. I froze, fork midway to my mouth. He mentioned me? Lily nodded. He said you took something awful and made it into something that helps people. He said that's what real strength looks like. I blinked back unexpected tears. Jason and I exchanged letters occasionally, formal, careful communications that acknowledged the past without dwelling on it. He had never mentioned the Silver Shields to me directly. He also said, Noah continued, studying his sandwich intently, that when he gets out, he wants to volunteer with your organization, to help warn people about guys like him. Would you let him? Lily asked, her expression serious. I considered the question carefully. That would depend on a lot of things. Whether he's truly changed, whether he's made amends, whether the organization would accept him. But you wouldn't say no right away? Noah pressed. No, I said slowly. I wouldn't say no right away. It was the truth. The past year had taught me that healing doesn't follow a straight line. It doubles back, takes detours, sometimes stands still, but it is always possible, always worth pursuing. After lunch, I accepted the Attorney General's award on behalf of the Silver Shields, using my speech to highlight the work still to be done in protecting vulnerable elderly people from financial predators. Elder fraud isn't just about money, I concluded. It's about dignity, about independence, about trust. When we protect our seniors from financial exploitation, we affirm their value in our society and their right to age with security and respect. The standing ovation was gratifying, but what meant more was seeing my grandchildren in the audience, their faces shining with pride. Despite everything that had happened, they were thriving, Lily excelling in science and math, Noah discovering a talent for creative writing. Later that evening, back at my small 2-bedroom house, conveniently located just 3 blocks from Roger and Helen's, I sat on the porch swing, watching the fireflies emerge in the summer twilight. My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. CNN wants to interview us about the Silver Shields next week. You in? I smiled, typing back, absolutely. From tragedy to triumph, from victim to advocate. It wasn't the journey I'd expected to take in my late 60s, but it was meaningful in a way I couldn't have imagined. The porch swing creaked as I rocked gently, thinking about everything that had changed in 18 months. I'd lost my son to prison, my daughter-in-law to her own greed, and nearly lost my sense of security in the world. But I'd gained so much too. A renewed relationship with my sister Caroline, who now visited regularly, a deeper bond with my grandchildren, a purpose that got me out of bed each morning, eager to make a difference. And perhaps most importantly, I discovered a strength in myself I never knew I possessed. The strength to face betrayal and not be defined by it. The strength to trust again, carefully and wisely. The strength to turn pain into purpose. As the stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky, I thought about Jason's words. You took something awful and made it into something that helps people. That's what real strength looks like. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope for healing even the deepest wounds. Not erasing them. The scars would always remain. But transforming them into something meaningful, something that helped light the way for others. I heard a car pull up, and moments later, Lily and Noah bounded up my porch steps, overnight bags in hand. Friday night was our standing sleepover date, with homemade pizza and board games. We brought Monopoly, Noah announced. I'm going to crush you both. Dream on, little brother, Lily retorted, dropping her bag by the door. Who wants to help make the pizza? I asked, standing up. Me, they chorused in unison. As I followed them inside, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. Life hadn't turned out the way I'd planned or expected. It had dealt me betrayals I never saw coming and challenges I never asked for. But here, in this moment, with my grandchildren laughing in my kitchen, with the Silver Shields making a difference in hundreds of lives, with a future still unfolding before me, here was where healing happened. Not all at once, but day by day, choice by choice, moment by precious moment. That's my story, friends. What began with a shocking Christmas morning revelation ended with a new chapter I never could have predicted. Have you ever had to reinvent yourself after betrayal or loss? How did you find healing? Comment below and share your own journey. And remember, it's never too late to turn pain into purpose, tragedy into triumph, betrayal into something beautiful. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of resilience and renewal. This is Donna Miller, signing off from Connecticut, where I've learned that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of a better one.